hand over to Egita.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Egita. I'm from TechHub, and we're very excited about this new cooperation. And let's proceed with the meetup. So today we have a very special guest. His name is Mike Bradshaw. He's been mentoring startups for years. Especially, he's been coaching pitching. By the way, he hates bullet points, so I really hope that none of the next presentations will have bullet points in them. But today he's here to talk about the world's smallest general-purpose computer named SOLU. So let's welcome Mike.
Thanks, Egita. So, good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about not just SOLU, because how many people here have heard of SOLU, by the way? Oh, this is good. For the rest of you, you will be seeing the future this evening. SOLU, as he said, is the world's smallest general-purpose computer. I'll tell you about it in a little bit, but first, what I'm going to do is tell you about what happened during our recent crowdfunding campaign. So we recently, in late October and November, early November, did a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, which we, in 3 weeks, managed to raise 200,000 euros, which was a little over 500-ish people. And then at the end, it was 610, 620. You'll understand in a little bit why I'm vague on the numbers. So I thought I'd come and tell what we learned when we did a crowdfunding campaign that was actually successful. So the first point to understand when you're going to do a crowdfunding campaign is understand what are you doing? Why have you decided to do crowdfunding? Is it to get sales? So you're out there selling your widgets? Or is it like we did, which was to prove the business model? Because in SOLU, we had been working for a year and nobody knew what we did. And it was rather fun to hear what people's guesses were. I'm blanking on them now, but we'll need to write that up, I suppose. Or are you doing it to get the word out there about what you're doing? Because crowdfunding is a great way to create publicity. So, the most important thing, of course, is that you need a plan. What are you going to do with this crowdfunding campaign? And when you're making that plan, you actually need to make 3 variations of it. Who here has actually done crowdfunding in any way, shape or form? Anyone? Nobody. Awesome. So you're now all going to become experts at this. So one of the things that you very quickly learn when you start reading about crowdfunding is that there are 2 spikes. There's one at the beginning and one at the end. And what nobody tells you is that the one at the end isn't so much a spike as a sort of little hump. It's a nice little tip that you do a bit better. So the reality is the majority of your sales will happen in the first sort of 24, 36 hours. If you're lucky, it'll stretch to like 72, so 3 days. And then after that, that's it. The numbers will go up, but not very much. So you need to make 3 plans. The first plan is, we launch this on the platform, we go crowdfunding, we launch it, and in the first 4 hours, we go through the target. And everyone thinks, woohoo! Except those people who've done that, and then they go, crap! Because that means you now have to actually make this thing in volume, and more likely, you're going to have to make it in much bigger volumes than you were planning. So what's your plan for that? You've got something on the back of an envelope, hopefully. The second plan, which is what happened to us, was that you nearly make it. You get to 85, 90% of the goal within 36 hours. So how are you going to make those last 15%? Because that's a long, hard slog. And then the third plan, the one that nobody wants to talk about, is what happens if we make 10%, or 20%, or 30% of our goal in the first week? How do we cancel this and save face? Or do we just keep pushing and hope we will make it? The other thing that's kind of important to realize is that most crowdfunding campaigns are in the tens of thousands of euros. That's what they're trying to raise. We were, already an oddball because we were going for such a large number as 200,000. So, this should be familiar for everyone. First thing, what are you going to do, then do it, and then check. The same thing happens with the crowdfunding campaign. Before you launch, you're going to have to do a whole bunch of planning and pre-activities. Then you will have the crowdfunding campaign, and then afterwards you will have some follow-up activities and then checking how you did. What nobody mentions is it will be really useful to actually do a smaller version of your crowdfunding campaign. So do a t-shirt sale, something like that, so you can get used to the tools. So we happened to use Kickstarter, and one of the things we discovered was that the Kickstarter interface, the things that you can access and the things you do change whether you're in pre-launch, during the campaign, or afterwards. So not only are you having to learn how to do crowdfunding and being really, really busy, but the tool you're using is changing underneath you. And Indiegogo is fairly similar, they also change. Those are the two big platforms. So it's a sensible thing to think about doing a smaller version, so something that runs for a week or 2 weeks. This is kind of what I look like at the end of the 4th day of the campaign. And I carried on looking like this until 3 days after the campaign. Because what happened for me was that my job there is as an evangelist and a community manager, and nobody else was stepping forward to take care of the tasks in the Kickstarter. And I started to do the tasks in the Kickstarter stupidly. And so, because I was doing them, I kept doing them, and then everyone assumed it was my job. And what everyone tells you is that actually doing the Kickstarter is a lot of work. And I was, yeah, I'm used to doing a lot of work. I work in startups. What nobody tells you is that doing a crowdfunding campaign is a 24/7 job for the duration of the campaign. And there's normally one person doing it. This is not a good thing, right? And it's not that there's a lot of things to do, but there's just this sort of constant background interruption. You've got to respond on your social media channels. You've got to be there within 30 minutes. You've got to be responding. You've got to be posting updates. So this is something we didn't actually plan very well ourselves, was thinking about before we did the campaign, what should we do when we get to 75% or 150, or what do we post when we reach the target? So we were actually at a hackathon just before Slush. We were 3 weeks into the campaign, and we'd just been working, and there was me and one of the engineers at this hackathon, and I'd gone to get a glass of water or a bathroom break. I come back and he goes, yeah, we made the target. I was like, oh, crap. Sat down at my computer and started to post the updates. And then the organisers of the event, which was the Helsinki equivalent of TechHub Riga, is Altum, yes. They all sort of came around going, woo, well done, yeah, you made it. And we were sitting there going, oh, what? Oh, yeah. And they took all these photos and sort of put the energy in us, because we were so busy just executing, we hadn't thought, what are we going to do? We hadn't lined this content up. So this is part of this planning thing. Think about your updates beforehand. Get them set. And then after you finish the campaign, you're going to have another surge. At the beginning, there's a huge surge of interest from the press. So be aware, if you decide to do crowdfunding, your CEO will need to not plan to sleep for 24 to 36 hours, because journalists will be constantly asking for interviews. So they need to get into the habit of being able to give the interviews, or if you're unlucky, they don't, which is a big problem for you. But the same thing happens at the end of the campaign. There's going to be a bunch of, you want to be able to capitalize on this interest. So again, plan it. Now a little bit about during the campaign, what do you need to do? You need to be changing the page, constantly learning what are people understanding, what are they not understanding. You have an FAQ, you do not want to be putting the FAQ into the page. And something that's rather a little bit counterintuitive, if you haven't run the campaign, the longer your page is, the better your campaign does. Because normally people want like small pages, with the summaries and just the bare information and just what they need. The problem is, very often, that you're asking people to back something that won't be made for a few months. So they need some reassurances, and so that means the longer your page is, the more information's on it, the better it is for you. The more likely they are to hit that buy button. So don't just post updates, woohoo, we've done this amount of money, but constantly be updating the page, changing the pictures. Do these pictures make it clearer? Get feedback from your friends and family or coaches. The thing you should do for sure when you're going to do a crowdfunding campaign is engage with a copywriter. Right, so this is a person whose job it is to turn out professional, good-looking, authentic text that holds together. I'm a native English speaker. I grew up, my childhood was in England. I can write English fairly well. But I trained as an engineer, so it tends to be a little bit dry and boring. The job of the copywriter is to actually make magic. And you want somebody like this on your team because you need that page to be interesting. And for the 2 or 3 weeks before the campaign launches, and the first couple of weeks of the campaign, you're going to be changing the text a lot. You're going to be writing a lot of text. So it'd be great to have somebody whose job it is to write text. In a similar vein, it's worthwhile engaging to get another graphics designer for the duration of the project. Because you're going to be wanting to create lots and lots of pictures. You're going to be wanting to do a lot of Photoshop. And if you've already got a designer on the team, they actually should be designing the product, not doing web graphics. So, a little bit about the platform. So, as I said, we did Kickstarter for reasons. And what Kickstarter has that's really, really good is they have the brand. So people don't say, I'm going to do a crowdfunding campaign, they say, I'm going to do a Kickstarter. And it doesn't matter what platform they're on. Whether they've written one for themselves, it's one of the big 2 commercial ones, everyone says, I'm doing a Kickstarter. So that's great. What's also really good is if you can get some sort of traction, if your graphs are looking good, you will start popping up on various people's radar, and they have a huge number of people who've backed multiple projects, so they understand this. So there's a big, group of people who will come and back your project. What's not so great about Kickstarter is the back end is very, very clunky. So the interface you use as the administrator of Kickstarter for your startup is not great. I mentioned about the changing UI. What's the other things it doesn't do well? Oh, and number one thing, if you put some reward up there, that somebody says, hey, for $50 you can get this t-shirt. And if you accidentally type in this t-shit, and one person backs it, that's now blocked. You cannot edit that at all. You can't take it off the web page. It's stuck there forever and ever that you were offering a t-shit. This is where a copywriter comes in. Again, very, very useful. They look out for these little accidental typos. So the descriptions in the rewards get locked very, very easily with Kickstarter. Now, just before we finished the Kickstarter, the other large crowdfunding platform, which is called Indiegogo, emailed us and said, hey, you've succeeded. You're going to have to build these things. we have this service called In Demand, which allows you to keep pre-selling the devices. So we said, yeah, sure, why not? So we've actually also been using the Indiegogo backend. So they have, a few benefits. For instance, you can remove rewards so they're no longer visible. You still have to fulfill them and they're still in the back end, but you can take off that t-shirt and put on a t-shirt. You can also convert all of your backers into your social media army, because everybody who backs you has a link, and you can use that as a referral code. So that if they manage to refer 10 people, you give them a free something. So they will now go out and try and get more people to buy your thing on Kickstarter, on Indiegogo. What's not so great is that Indiegogo will let anybody put anything on their site. There is really very little checking. So there's a lot of scams and things that are never going to be built. And also there's an awful lot of things that look really, really beautiful, but they're just Photoshop. Kickstarter actually has a team who goes through every single campaign looking for Photoshop images. And if you have Photoshopped images on your page on Kickstarter, they will, if you don't remove them, they will pull your campaign. They want very much for the things that you are offering on the Kickstarter to be real products with real prototypes. Indiegogo, yeah, fine, put it on there. The other thing that I've seen so far with Indiegogo is their back end is much, much more feature rich. So the editor is much easier to use. They give you much nicer graphs, so you don't actually, with Kickstarter, you kind of have to rely on Google Analytics. With Indiegogo, Google Analytics is a nice backup. They give you very, very pretty graphs that you can upload things with. So, in summary, if you're going to do a crowdfunding campaign, it's a long, hard slog. It's really just going through and making sure your list is ready. And the one tip is go and ask people who've done crowdfunding campaigns recently. The crowdfunding scene changes. So if they've done it 3 years ago, their advice is useful, but it's kind of no longer relevant. How long have I been talking for?
10 minutes.
Oh, you got it?
And then 5 minutes for Q&A.
Okay. So, I promised you that I would show you what SOLU is. And I took my life in my hands and took one of our engineering prototypes here with me and an early version of the software. And this presentation has been running on SOLU. And if our engineers find out I've done this, I am a dead man. Because that presentation was a hack. So this is what SOLU looks like. It's a completely different way of interacting with a computer. The computer is here on the table, and I'm using it as a touchpad. So I can move things around, I can cause this to happen. And if I would like to share this project with somebody, share it with her. That's it. Everything that is linked and tendrilled is now shared between us. She has the ability to do this. What is interesting is every single cell here is not just the data, it's not just the content, but it's a link to the application used to edit that content. So when you use the app, you send the share, the person automatically gets the app. So they don't need to download it, do anything like that. So one of the biggest things we're doing with SOLU is computers will become zero maintenance. So if there are any system administrators in the room or IT support staff, you need to start looking for new jobs, because SOLU will put you out of work. The way that we're going to make money is not through selling hardware, but that we will charge a monthly fee of $19 for access to SOLU. And that's all the storage you'll ever need. Well, technically it'll be limited to 2 terabytes, but we're fairly certain that as long as you're not a teenage boy, you're not going to have 2 terabytes of stuff. Most people have a few gigabytes of stuff. So 2 terabytes is a pretty good limit. You also get all the apps you can eat. And the reason why a developer would want to build something on SOLU is that we share the revenue. So we gather the revenue in, and then we share it. We take $5 of the 19 and put it into a pool, and then allocate it to the developers. So that this is a great way, if you're making something that's collaborative, team-based, then you can use SOLU, and you can make money. So if you're the classic, 3 developers and a designer, and no idea how to make money, now you can use SOLU to do that. The apps themselves are written using HTML5, so it's actually really, really easy to build them. The only thing you have to think about is that the small screen is your control surface where all your buttons are, and the big screen, which we refer to as the wall, is where all the content is. So, I have about 4 minutes left now for Q&A. I'm either crowdfunding or on SOLU. Sorry, anybody got a question? Here we go.
Okay, I see that...
If you turn the catch box on.
Not very many questions or so I wanted to ask. Can you elaborate more where to put this SOLU thing actually? Is it next to Android, or is it next to a BeagleBone or Raspberry Pi, or is it next to where?
Okay.
In which drawer to put that thing in?
In its own drawer. We're doing something that's completely new. The hardware that we have there is it's one of the, we just did some benchmarks, and we're in the top 10 devices in the world that use ARM chips, so mobile portable devices. So not Raspberry Pi, BeagleBone, way above that. What the chip is in there is a Tegra K1, which means it's a high-end chip with like 192 graphics cores. The thing it's designed to replace is your desktop computer. So that big tower box thing that sits next to your monitor, you can take that, put it away, and instead you have this small, beautiful object. And this whole idea is that the way we work, so we've got zero maintenance, and then also everything here is collaborative and project-based. So the UI is different. So it's allowing people to think in the way that you're actually, the modern way of working.
So it's a new OS?
Yes. So it's based on Linux, so it's a Linux kernel that we've modified, so we've forked the kernel. I'm 90+% certain that anything that we can push back upstream, we have. So if there's anything there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Who wants to try again?
Okay.
Speak in black.
Okay.
Speak in black.
This one. You said that this one will be the future common computer.
Yeah.
And I guess that sometimes some professionals will want to use it in their jobs and works. How are you going to meet this challenge when artists, programmers, developers, I don't know, whatever else is going to use it?
Okay, so for the super high-end stuff, we won't be able to get Adobe on this to begin with, weirdly. So that anybody who's stuck in the Adobe Creative Suite, we can't help. But if we get decent tools, then yes, the creative types can move across. For programmers, in theory, you could do it, but it's not designed yet for programmers. Having said that, one of our actual core developer was really happy about 2 months ago because he got Vim running on this. And what was important to him was he got Vim running before Emacs. That really just all brains using our office. But the first users, it's more of the lightweight email, collaborative tools, Trello, Asana, this type of thing, the type of thing that people are doing on there that could be done on an iPad, could be done on this instead. But this is all backed up versions and is collaborative and isn't sandboxed.
Okay, anyone else feeling adventurous?
One at the back.
One in the back.
I wanted to ask a question. I noticed that before Kickstarter campaign, you were in stealth mode. You weren't telling anyone what are you working on. Is this paid off? And if launching another campaign, would you suggest to stay as a secret or tell immediately what you're working on?
Okay. So it worked really, really well for us. So while we were in stealth mode, it's not that we were not telling anyone. It was that we weren't telling anyone publicly. So we were keeping people under like friend EAs or other reasons where they wouldn't share it. And yes, it did work because that kind of pressure of nobody being able to talk about what we're doing got released all at once. That worked for us because of what we were doing. So, SOLU is incredibly ambitious. It is incredibly revolutionary. We're going up against 3 or 4 mid-sized American corporations you may have heard of, like Google, Apple, Microsoft, with an aim to take significant chunks of their business. So it's incredibly ambitious. So we needed to get to a stage where we had something real and demonstrable before we came out. If you're going to do something that isn't kind of where it isn't such a big moonshot, if you're making a new Bluetooth speaker, if you were making a throwable microphone, I would start blogging today. I'm going to make the throwable microphone, blah, 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 and start building up do the 9-month build up of the 200,000 fans you need to get the 10,000 of the campaign. Someone.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. For example, this device is small as combination. Okay. Couple of questions. This device, when I watched your presentation online, I saw that it's mostly connected to the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly everything is there. Okay, when I'm offline, if all my files I can decide if those files, which files should stay offline and which files should be online.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I'm offline now, and no internet, but you still have to on. It's possible to connect 2 solos together, peer-to-peer, and have communication together, and how secure it is. And can I actually decide where I want to back up and store all my files?
Okay, so there's actually about 4 questions in there.
Yeah.
So, SOLU is designed to work both on and offline. It's got a battery in it. The local device will have 32 gigs of storage, which is effectively the most recent 32 gigs you need. And the job of the OS is to figure out what should be on the device and what's in the cloud, and it will automatically push things up to the cloud. So it knows what it can delete off the device, because if you need it again, it can pull it. The peer-to-peer network thing, that's something we're looking at seriously. It is in our user stories. I can't remember when we're going to deliver it. I don't have the roadmap fully in my head, but it is something we're going to look to deliver, because we live in Europe, which means we go roaming more often, and yes, I know roaming's going down and but we live in Europe, right? Even better, we live in the northern part of Europe. And up here we have really low cost, really ubiquitous internet. I frequently travel to the UK, well, frequently twice a year travel to the UK, where there are places where I cannot get mobile phone, as in SMS signal, right? So I know that the internet goes away. So this is something we very much designed into the product. And then from the security point of view, our CTO, one of his previous companies was a company called Nixel, which is the leading Nordic security company, software house, consultancy. So it is baked into the way that the developers think. Security is part of their thinking. Everything on the device will be secured through something called convergent encryption, which I kind of sort of understand. Luckily, the developers actually understand it. So, and was there a thing I haven't answered?
Yeah, if I can have my own cloud.
Oh, right. So if you so third-party clouds, we've got Dropbox working. We plan to be able to get Google Drive and OneDrive working because they have public APIs. For other,
Like DigitalOcean, Amazon.
if you want to direct access to those, we'd have to see what the community wants. So what are our users asking for? The third-party stuff. We're planning it to be regular users. If you want direct access to S3, this is something, if you want to write the app, and lots of people use the tool to access their S3 files, you would then get revenue for that. Right, so.
Okay, one last question. Please speak into microphone, okay? Here's one.
I wanted to ask about your clients. Who do you see as your main client? Because especially in tech world, people try to buy new stuff because they want to be first, because they want to advertise their own products and so on. So just in the beginning, there's a phase and everyone's interested, but when they actually realize that it's not going to work, everyone just comes to this product and move on to the next thing. So who do you see as your main client?
So initially, we'll be looking at basically the people in this room, right? Entrepreneurs, because they're willing to try new technology because it will give them a performance boost. Does anybody here email Word documents regularly? Okay, a couple of people, right? Most of you work online collaboratively already. This is just a much easier UI with backup, with automatic backup. How we'll get across the chasm from the early adopters, the entrepreneurs, is your families. Schools is another option for us. The actual reason this product exists is because our CEO needs this for his mother. Because his mother has this old computer, a pile of floppy disks, and another pile of USB sticks. And that's all of her life. And it's all kind of scattered, and he's terrified that someday he'll get some bit rot. And so with this, because everything's automatically backed up and secure, everything's there for her, she won't use the collaboration part so much, but she'll be using the project thing, the idea, project. So it's anybody who works a lot with projects and collaborative groups of people together. We're searching those people out. So if anybody's got a really, really great idea, I'm all ears. I also have an envelope full of stickers. We have really, really cool stickers. So if anybody wants one, we can figure them out. After the ladies have picked through them and found the best ones. All right, thank you very much, everyone.